Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we are taking a look at the Swiss LMG-25. This was Switzerland's first basically modern light machine gun. It was, of course, as the name implies, adopted in 1925. It was developed by a guy named Adolph Furrer, F-U-R-R-E-R, who was the director of the Waffenfabrik Bern arsenal and firearms factory. Now, Furrer was a huge fan of the Luger toggle locking system, and Switzerland was one of the very first countries to test and adopt the Luger as pistol. Right at the end of World War I, Furrer is experimenting with the use of toggle locking systems. So some of his early guns are literally like Luger pistols mounted sideways in pistol caliber carbine chassis. Kind of neat systems. He evolves this system, iterates on the design, and by 1924 he has the design for the LMG-25 essentially fully developed. First prototypes are manufactured in 1924. This is chambered for the standard Swiss GP11 cartridge, that's 75 by 55, but it does have a big old toggle locking system in here. It's recoil operated. It is a magazine fed light machine gun, so it uses this guy as a 30 round full capacity magazine. Locks in the side of the gun. Incidentally, those magazines are also compatible with the Stgw 57 or the SIG 510 that would come several decades later. So we have a bunch of stuff to look at here. We have a bunch of accessories for the gun that I want to show you. We're going to go through some of the operations of the tripod and, of course, the mechanical operations of the gun, because there is one particularly weird, cool, and unique thing here, which is that this has a little selector switch that allows you to go from normal operation to advanced primer ignition, and that is something I have never seen on a gun before. All right, let's do a quick overview of the gun, then we'll take it apart. We have markings on the upper part of the receiver. This sticks out from the side of the gun because side-mounted toggle lock, but this is integral part of the receiver. Manufacturer was Waffenfabrik Bern, serial number for the gun. We have a 3-position selector switch here. S is safe, M is full auto, F is semi-auto. Swap that back and forth. The rear sight is essentially identical to that on the Swiss Schmidt-Rubin rifles, the K31 as well, as is the front sight. You can see that the front sight is in this slightly angled groove here, track. The idea there is you can tap this forward and move it in very small controlled increments left to right to set your windage. There's a collar here that is intended for the detachable bipod. I have the bipod off since we're mounting this mostly on the tripod today. The magazine catch is back here. Push that in. You can pivot the magazine out. It is a nose-in, rock-back style of magazine. We have the charging handle here. We have a pair of folding dust covers on the other side. So when I rack this, those two dust covers open up, and our toggle lock pivots out into that open space. This is not a dent, by the way. This is an intentional design of the trigger guard, and I believe that is to fit the fortification mounts, which would have predated the LMG-25s. They would have been set up for MG-11 machine guns. So in classic sort of light machine gun accessory style, there is a rear monopod. Has a hook up here, and that can clip in. Get this, that clips in right there, snaps in place, and when you pair this with the bipod, it allows you to have sort of a pseudo tripod for a little more precise controlled fire. What's cool about this one that I think is unique to the Swiss LMG-25 is that you can attach this to the front tripod mount right there, and it will actually function as a vertical front grip, like an assault fire style of grip. There's one other really cool, I think unique to the LMG-25 control, and that's this little switch out here. So in the forward position like this, the gun runs in advanced primer ignition mode, which means the primer is ignited while the recoiling parts are still moving forward. That means the initial recoil of the gun has to first stop the moving parts and then advance and then start to accelerate them backwards. If I push this down and slide it back to the normal position, Now the gun fires, well, in normal mode, which is to say that the moving parts come to their full forward position, come to a rest, and then the cartridge fires. So normal is going to provide more energy moving backwards, and the advanced primer ignition is going to result in softer recoil and, I suspect, a lower rate of fire. So in practice, the gun was intended to be used in the advanced primer ignition mode in general, and the only times you were supposed to switch back to normal mode were if you were firing downhill, which means that the bolt is being pulled downward by gravity, and so you need that little extra bit of energy to help push the bolt back upwards as well as cycling. If you're firing blanks, you did not want advanced primer ignition, and if the gun were dirty or in really adverse conditions, again, you want the extra bit of energy. You don't want to bleed the energy off using the advanced primer ignition mechanism. All right, now let's go ahead and take this apart. As complex as a toggle lock system sounds, it's actually a pretty easy gun to work with. So this is spring-loaded in here. We push this tab down, rotate it out so that it unlocks from the receiver, and pull it out. This is actually the cam pin that connects the toggle system to the receiver and forces the toggle action to cycle. In the Luger pistols, the toggle operates on a cam. On this, it operates on that pin. With that out, I can then unscrew the rear cap of the gun. That is the recoil spring right there. You can see this little notch. That is locked by this pin. So as long as the pin's in place, you can't unscrew this to take it off. Now I just pull the charging handle back, and I can pull out a very long, complete bolt, barrel extension, bolt assembly, and barrel all out of the gun. So this is one complete unit, and there were actually spares that were issued with the gun in these nice leather carrying cases. So if we pop the front cap off, there is our spare barrel mechanism. The discoloration here, by the way, is part of the actual factory heat treating process. That's not the result of like excess firing. That's just how all of the barrels look. Now, the way this action works is it's going to eject out this side of the gun. It's going to feed in this side of the gun. So if we look at the receiver here, the feed side right there lines up with the magazine well. The ejection side, this whole thing is open. When the gun's not in use, those dust covers close it off, which is very important. Then this back arm on the toggle is locked in place with this pin and fixed into the receiver. It is a recoil operated gun, so you have a little bit of a blast face on the front of the barrel assembly here, and when you fire, this whole thing is going to, sorry about that, this whole thing is going to cycle backwards. So because this pin locks this leg of the toggle to the receiver, as the barrel assembly comes backward, this pin, this leg, gets pulled basically forward and inward, and that breaks the toggle joint here. So when this is straight, pressure coming back has nowhere to go. The bolt remains locked closed. This is a knee joint, again, just like the Luger. Once you pop it open, now pressure here will fold the whole thing up like that. So that's the basic operating mechanism. In the Luger, this all reciprocates back until it hits a cam that pushes this up. In the case of the LMG-25, it's this pin being fixed to the receiver that pushes it up. Once that breaks open, recoil inertia is going to push it all the way back like that. It will eject the empty case. Then the mainspring pushing on the back end of the assembly right there pushes this whole thing forward. And remember, this pin is still locked in place in the receiver. So it forces that whole assembly to go forward and lock back in place like that, ready to fire again. Now that you see how that works, we'll go ahead and further disassemble it by pulling this pin out. That is what actually holds, this is the pivot point about which the whole thing rotates. So if I pull that out, I can bring this back all the way and lift the whole toggle assembly out of the gun. So there's spring tension here that's being provided by the firing pin spring. You can see that right back in there. So when the toggle is cycling, this lug pulls the firing pin back into the bolt. This is an open bolt firing gun, so when it closes, that lug releases the firing pin, which protrudes forward automatically and fires as soon as the toggle is closed and fully locked. That's our nice big extractor right there. The ejector is right here. It's a spring-loaded ejector, so as this goes back to the appropriate point in the receiver where the case needs to be ejected out, this gets pushed inwards. It protrudes inside, and that kicks the empty case out. And that is how the LMG-25 operates and field strips. Now, let's put it back on the tripod and look at some of the cool mechanical aspects of the tripod. All right, so to mount this on the tripod is a pretty easy process. We have this hook back here that drops right into the rear hook on the tripod. And then this collar comes over and clamps in place. You have a nice scale here to track horizontal dispersion of the gun. We have a pair of traverse stops that you can set anywhere in here. This lever locks the traverse in place. So if I pull it back, the gun is fixed. If I push it forward, I can slide the gun and then of course set these for a fixed field of fire. There's a similar elevation lock. If I push that forward, the gun can now be adjusted by this hand crank or just grabbed and moved. And as I pull this back, it just tensions the elevation adjustment down to lock in place. So that's the wheel that allows me to adjust the gun elevation up and down. Now, if I take this plunger and push it over, I actually have an elevation lock. So I have a fixed range of elevation that I can move the gun in between. And the cool thing here is if I take this wheel and pull it out, I can pick between a sequence of sizes of elevation range. So I can go all the way from this very long one, which gives me the most elevation adjustment for a sector of fire, or I can flip back to this one. It gives me only that. Now they're marked. They're 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20, and I think that is mils of elevation adjustment. A couple other cool pieces of kit to go with this. We have the magazine backpack. It's a leather strap there. That holds 10 of the magazines. They also had a basically around the neck magazine carrying system. These each hold 2, like so. Of course, we have anti-aircraft sights. So this is going to clamp around the barrel jacket, and note we have a little post here that is located, specifically located for that hole in the jacket. So we have another clamp. There's the front anti-aircraft sight. And then to go along with that spider sight, we have this rear sight. For that, you move the rear sight here up to 300 meters, clamp that on. There's your rear sight. Now, if you were actually going to use this in an anti-aircraft role, you probably wouldn't want to do it from this style of mount. So we can actually transform this into an anti-aircraft mode, take off this traverse stop, then I can slide the mount completely off. This does allow you to completely free move the gun too. So if you want to set this up on the tripod but not be limited in your traverse or your elevation, you can just detach it like this and have complete freedom of movement with it. But we can now press this button in and lift this whole unit off the tripod. Then I can take this and just stand it up vertically. We have a second socket mount built into the tripod right here. So push that button in, and I can then lock this in the upward position. And then I can bring the gun back in, snap it into position right there. And now I have a fully flexible anti-aircraft mount. Now the tripod doesn't really have 3 legs to stand on like this. So normally you would have an assistant gunner actually stabilizing the mount, but that gives you your anti-aircraft use. So the first production of the LMG-25 was 1924, which led to its adoption in 1925. Production would continue until 1946, right after the end of World War II, with a grand total of 23,045 of the guns manufactured for the Swiss Army. There was a cavalry version with a folding buttstock that was made in very limited numbers. It's unclear if it was formally adopted or if it was just an experimental thing, but either way, very few of those were made. Between 1939 and 1942, they also made a version with an optics mount for use in fortresses. They made a total of 1,742 of those. So this is the far and away majority standard pattern on the standard tripod that it was issued with. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Big thanks to the fine Swiss gentleman who provided me this example to film for you. Thanks for watching.